relating to requiring parental consent for behavior or mental health treatment by school district personnel.
Chair recognizes Mr. Patterson to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, quick show of hands. Who thinks that folks ought to be able to treat your children for non-emergency care without your consent? That's what this bill seeks to address. A while back, constituents in my district brought a concern forward about health clinics treating students in Denton ISD. Since then, I've learned that there are about 90 such clinics throughout the state. What's worse is that these clinics are able to treat some students without parental consent. So what services are offered by these clinics? According to their website, Petty Place, who has clinics in at least Denton and Louisville ISD, provides, quote, integrated mental health services, unquote, within their primary care. An article in Child Trends from January 22 discusses how clinics can, quote, overcome hurdles to offer or connect students with family planning services. Is that happening in Texas? Well, according to a contract between Humble ISD and Memorial Hermann Community Benefit Corporation, family planning services was listed in the services provided to students. These facts should be concerning to all parents, whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, or not political at all. Now, I fully recognize that some students don't have the same access to actual health care as other students. And I realize schools may technically be a convenient location to provide actual health care to some students. But as a strong advocate for protecting Texas kids and for parental rights, with several strong legislative wins already under my belt, it's my goal with this legislation that we ensure no student is ever subjected to any behavior or mental health information or treatment without the full written consent of his or her parent. This bill ensures parents remain the chief caregiver of their kids and ensures no school personnel can ever provide treatment directly or indirectly to a student unbeknownst to the child's parent.
Mr. Speaker,
Ms. Howard, for what purpose?
would the gentleman yield?
Would the gentleman yield for questions?
I'd be happy to.
The gentleman yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Patterson. Just have a few questions here. Can you clarify what constitutes behavioral or mental health services under this bill? Would casual check-ins by a school counselor or basic mental wellness support fall under this definition?
No, ma'am.
As a former nurse, I'm concerned about delays in care. I know you mentioned in your layout non-emergency. I don't see that in the bill, though. So can you explain how this bill accounts for the time-sensitive nature of mental health crises?
Yes, ma'am. This bill does not affect the Texas Family Code. And in Section 32.003 and 32.004 of the Texas Family Code, a child can consent without without a parent for counseling for suicide prevention, chemical addiction or dependency, or sexual, physical, or emotional abuse. And if a child is in acute need of care immediately, then obviously they can go forward and be protected under the law to go forward and provide that care for that student at that time.
So is that something that we could reference in your bill that would make sure that people are aware of that?
Well, I mean, that's referenced in the Texas Family Code, which is a different
Right.
section of code. I don't know that it would be germane to my bill.
Okay, I would like to look at that anyway. Are there any liability protections in place for school nurses or counselors who, due to this bill, may be legally barred from acting in a student's best interest during a health-related episode without written consent? Or do you think that the Family Code covers that as well?
I believe that if there's an acute incident happening in the moment, that the schools are protected to provide the care that's needed for that student.
The language in the bill would prohibit providing a student with, quote, informational materials on family planning, human sexuality, or mental health, end quote, without parental consent. So in a plain language reading of the bill, if we're talking about informational materials on mental health, that means the school counselor, or does it not? I mean, a school counselor can't have a flyer about topics like dealing with stress or test anxiety. And if this is not your intent, again, can we clarify that we're not trying to prevent this type of information being provided?
I think what we're trying to prevent is any sort of treatment or information that would be given as treatment for a mental health or behavioral health situation with a child without parental consent.
So again, we might want to, if you're open to it, visit the language there of informational materials could be construed as flyers with information. School nurses are important sources of trusted information. I know that in my own children's high school, the school nurses had flyers with information on topics like sexually transmitted infections, which, by the way, are increasing at an alarming rate here in Texas among Texas teens. Do we actually want to prevent that information from being available so that teens actually have access to information that could prevent these diseases that are spreading rapidly in our state?
I have an amendment in the system that I believe will cover to make sure that we don't involve this bill in the TEKS and any sex ed course that would be happening. I think that would be addressed in that situation.
And actually, I did have a question about the TEKS, but I think I'm really more talking about pamphlets and brochures and things that might be available in the nurse's office, in the counselor's office that would provide this information. But in regard to the TEKS, which of course are adopted by the State Board of Education, they do cover a lot of content on mental health. And when I read informational materials on mental health, I want to make sure, again, as I think you're saying you perhaps have an amendment to, that doesn't impact health textbooks with state-approved information on mental health or any other subjects that might be approved by the State Board of Education.
That is not the intent of this bill, and that's why we included that language in our final amendment. I had put 3 amendments in there, one of which was not going to be germane, one of which did not include the information about the TEKS. And so if you look in the system, the one with the star next to my name is the amendment that I'm going to go with.
Okay.
And that one includes to clarify that we're not talking about TEKS or any curriculum that is approved for the classroom. We're talking about behavioral or mental health treatment within the school setting.
Okay, so what you are telling me that should be clear in the bill, and I'd need to look at it again to make sure, but that it's treatment, not information, but treatment?
Well, it's healthcare, and I think part of healthcare would be providing a child with direct information to that specific child about something going on medically as it relates to behavior or mental health. And as a parent of 3 public school students, I would want to be not only involved in that conversation, but I would want to be able to provide consent for any non-emergency treatment that is happening with my child.
And I absolutely agree with you that we want the parents to be involved. Obviously, as a parent, I would want to be involved. There are occasions, of course, and I think we'll probably hear from different members about situations where young people approach their trusted adults in the school setting to obtain information. And obviously, we want the parents to be aware of that. Sometimes there is a need to maintain a certain trust level to make sure that students don't shut down and that they continue to seek help and guidance. But we can talk about that later. So mental health is being singled out in this, other than family planning and contraceptives, for consent restrictions when schools routinely provide other health-related content like nutrition education, anti-smoking campaigns, concussion protocols, etc., without parental consent. So why are you singling out mental health in particular?
I think specifically from my perspective, as someone that has worked on these issues and cares deeply about the mental health of our children, as you've seen in other legislation that I've filed and passed out of this House, I think that the problem is that mental health is a much more broad term than smoking or some of the other examples that you gave there. Mental health is an extremely broad term, and I think that there could potentially be examples where adults have chosen to use the umbrella of mental health to talk with children about things that may not necessarily be appropriate. or may not necessarily be relevant. And so we just wanted to make sure that if you're going to provide treatment or information materials in the mental health or behavioral health umbrella, that you would get the parents' consent before doing so.
And to your point, being a large umbrella with a lot of things that might be under it, in order to fully understand what's in the bill, there may need to be more clarity about what it is that you are using in your definition there so that it would be understandable, because I assume there might be some different interpretations of what the mental health umbrella might include.
Sure.
Final question has to do, what if a student shares that they're being abused at home in some way? Does a school nurse or counselor have to call the student's abuser before being able to speak to the student about it? And how does this comport with the requirements that we already have in place to report when we are aware of potential abuse?
Yeah, that's a different section of code. I guess if you want to say, just for the example, a counselor or teacher in that case, or any school personnel, I guess would be a better way to phrase it, already has protections under the law to talk to the child about that and to contact law enforcement quickly about that situation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Tallarico, for what purpose?
I raise a point of order against further consideration of House Bill 497 under Rule 8, Section 1A1 of the House Rules, and under Article 3, Section 35 of the Texas Constitution, on the grounds that the caption fails to give the legislature and the public reasonable notice of the subject of the bill.
Please bring your point of order down front.